You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Stellar success again. Dr. Stanley, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I'm wondering, what is AI in dentistry?
Well, AI in
What kind of
dentistry,
applications can you have with that?
yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of applications. I mean, the applications will really never stop. Currently, it's happening in orthodontics, in smile design, in remote monitoring, in assisting in diagnosis. I think it really took hold in dentistry with assistance in diagnosis. So, my company Pearl, and there's others as well that assisted in diagnosing on radiographs. And then it kind of went to panoramics, and now it's going to CBCTs, and there's all different ways that it's assisting and diagnosing. I think where I really see it gaining a lot of traction now is with large language models, is with natural language processing. So, for example, listening to consultations and automatically writing notes, listening to phone calls and automatically having insights on that. There's a lot of that happening in dentistry as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't wait to see how this field is going to develop. I think it's so much potential right there for, especially in your specialty. Um,
It's going to take away a lot of the a lot of the mundane tasks that we don't
yeah,
want to do.
yeah, that's true. Um, do you consider yourself successful?
I consider myself successful, yes.
What does that mean to you?
To me, that means that I have been able to prioritize my family. I have time freedom. I have financial freedom, but that's kind of the last thing. I'm in good health. So that's really what success means to me. People always ask me, who's the most successful person you've met? Because we have celebrities in my practice and I've been in the tech world. And so there's a lot of high net worth individuals that I meet, but the most successful person that I know is my dad by far. He's been married for 50 plus years. All of his kids and grandkids like him. He's in great health. He has good friends. I mean, that's really success for me.
That's very true. I think success needs some scale of measurements that sometimes we forget about them.
Dentists especially think that success just means that you're clinically successful. And so I always do this exercise with people when I'm doing live events is I say, okay, let's imagine it's 30 years from now. You were the most successful, amazing clinical dentist you know of. You made tons of money, but you have no relationship with your kids. You have no relationship with your spouse. You have no friends. Your health is in a poor place. Is that successful? And I think it
Right,
really gets people to think about what what are their values and what's the priority of those values. Most
right.
dentists put clinical success over everything, which I
Yeah,
think is
correct.
incorrect.
Yeah, that's what I want to kind of dive into this question with medical professionals because most of the time what happens is that the view is so narrowed towards our professional life, and many people interpret that in an amount of money that need to be reached
Yeah.
through medicine, and it's so much different than that. And I think your case is one example like that. So I want to kind of go back and see where you came from. What's your story to get to where you are right now?
How far back do you want to
Um, I don't know. It's up to you. The
Well, I mean, for
most
me,
interesting parts.
the the biggest changes for me started happening in 2018. So I was 10 years out of school, 10 years out of residency, basically. And sorry, 8 years out of residency. And I came home and it was literally a dark and stormy night. And I went to the front door and the deadbolt was on. And I knocked on the door. My wife opened the door holding my son, who was 1 at the time. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And I wasn't talking about marriage or family or kids or anything. I was talking about doing dentistry. It was too stressful for me. It wasn't worth the money. It wasn't worth the stress. And so I knew I had to go on this journey and I didn't know really what it was. But me being a researcher, I went directly to PubMed and started reading articles on why I felt like this, the science of overachievers and positive psychology. And I sat under some really big teachers in this space and I started learning, and I really ended up changing my whole life. I started to make myself a priority. Before, I was putting everything into my patients, everything into my team, and I thought that was really the just thing to do. That was really the virtuous thing to do. And I think it is at a certain level, but I did it to the point where I lost myself. And so I had to start making myself a priority, put my health as a priority, my mental health as a priority, my communication skills, all the things that nobody learns in residency or in dental school or in medical school. I had to start making that a priority. And so I did that. My whole life changed. I became more creative. My practice grew. I ended up starting a dental AI company that turned out to be fairly valuable. And then it allowed me to start helping others doing the same thing because I was traveling around and teaching other doctors how to do things. I started telling my story, and they said, well, I'm kind of going through the same thing. What did you do? How'd you do it? So then I ended up creating a platform and online CE courses, in-person CE courses that now we've had over 2,000 doctors go through in over 30 countries. And it's been the most rewarding thing that I've been able to do in my career.
Yeah, very interesting. Um, I want to focus a little bit on your AI enterprise in this space, and
Yeah.
it's something that I think is very interesting for the new wave of technology.
Mhm.
How did you come up with this idea? How did you implement it?
Hmm.
And where do you want to go with it?
So this idea came through a hygiene check with one of my patients. So one of my patients had a billion-dollar AI company that was not in dentistry. It was in advertising, basically. But his dad was a doctor, his dad was a dentist, and he had this idea that he wanted to apply what they were doing in advertising and bring it to medicine. And so we started contemplating things, we started working on stuff, and we really incubated this within his previous company for about 4 years. And we were working on it once a week, something like this. And it was maybe twice a week, then it was 3 times a week, and started to become serious. Then we raised our own round of financing, um, you know, um, incubated it within that company, then spun it out, and ended up growing it to be fairly large. I mean, the company, the most recent valuation was $400 million. We're in thousands of practices around the world, 120 countries. So where do I think it'll go? I think eventually this will be the type of technology that's in every practice around the world. It'll be so ubiquitous with any medical provider, any dental provider that it'll kind of be silly. Like now we think of digital radiographs. I mean, we don't even say they're digital radiographs because of course they're digital, right? We're not going to use film anymore. And I think that it's going to get to that point with AI. It's like no one's going to read a radiograph without AI anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. So tell us a little bit about the concept of the company to help
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, so the company's called Pearl. It was really based on the core product offering was reading dental x-rays with the eyes of an expert. So once you do that, once you can index thousands or hundreds of thousands of images, then you have a lot of data that you can do things with. So on the dental side, one of the things we do is assist doctors in diagnosis. So point out areas of interest, highlight things, give percentages, give ideas of what's happening. That also helps with the patient. So the patients are then seeing what's happening on the screen and having a non-biased third party system that's having them view what's happening on the radiograph. And then from there, we can do things like cross-reference what's happening in the practice management system. So let's say we find something on the radiograph, we look in the treatment plan, and we don't see anything treatment planned for that specific tooth or that specific side. Then we can have just put a little flag up for the dental team, and then they can take another look, or they can say, oh no, that's a false positive or a false negative, or I already saw that, I'm going to treatment plan that later. But it's really just like having this assistive tool that's constantly looking at your radiographs, looking at your chart notes, looking at your treatment plan, and assisting in that. Now, we've ended up incorporating a ton of new technology in that. Like there's something new coming out called Pearl Scribe, which is going to be listening to consultations and assisting in writing notes. There's little things like using AI to automate insurance claims. So a lot of these, again, little mundane tasks are happening, but the core skill of how we started the company was really with computer vision. So allowing a computer to see and interpret imagery just like a human and assist the actual doctor in making the diagnosis.
Yeah, I can only imagine how this will become the next big thing,
Yeah.
especially in dental offices. Because right now, I mean, from what I know, and I'm not in this field, but from what I know, it's already the technology is taking over the whole practice, basically.
Yeah, I mean, AI will be in every little thing you can think of. I mean, I use AI all day long, personally,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
in my practice, they use AI as well. Is AI in our intraoral scanners, AI in our photographs, AI in our practice management systems, AI in our X-rays, AI in our 3D printing. I mean, everything that we do now is assisted at least with AI.
Right, right. I want to go back a little bit to what you said a few minutes ago. The fact that you stopped in your tracks at some point in your life and said, I can't do this anymore.
Hmm.
And I know burnout is it's a big issue for a lot of you know, dentistry practitioners, I would say.
Hmm.
But what did it mean for you personally to transform yourself into a better version of yourself? What kind of habits, routines, skills you need to acquire to be what you are right now?
I think there was things outside of the practice that I had to do. So I created something called the dream sequence, which is diet, relationships, exercise, appreciation, meditation, and sleep. All of those are everything you have to do outside of the practice to show up in your best self. So, I mean, and this is nothing new for people, but like prioritizing sleep. I mean, there's this big hustle culture right now, which is like sleep when you're dead, oh, I wake up at 4 a.m. And if you're doing surgery, I mean, you can't be sleeping on 4 hours. We have all the research. We know that you are not at your best self. You don't have the right hormones. You don't have the right focus. You can't do that. So that was one thing I was doing, was just not taking care of myself. So that's all the stuff outside of your practice you have to do. Eat right, exercise. I mean, I incorporated meditation, which has a ton of crazy research around it, focusing on my relationships, really having rest too. It's something that sounds so silly, but I think most doctors see rest as a reward and not really as a right or something that's required. And then the other things that I really had to do were more inside of the practice. This was for me leadership skills, communication skills, how to set boundaries with people, how to set expectations. None of the stuff that I learned in residency or in dental school. So I was a fairly good dentist, but I was a poor leader. I was a poor communicator. I was terrible at setting expectations with patients or team members or family. I was terrible with setting boundaries. I was scared to set boundaries with people. And so once I learned these two things, which was how to show up best, how to prioritize myself more, and then how to be a better communicator, how to learn all these soft skills, that was when everything changed for me.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like people forget about the fact that they need to focus on themselves first before focusing on others, especially patients. It's like the thing in the airplane, right? They always always tell you to put your oxygen
Put your
mask
own
on you
oxygen mask on
first,
first.
right?
Yep.
And most people forget this. Like they want to treat more patients, they want to start more businesses, they want to do more stuff in complete disregard of their own self.
Yes. Well, because I think there's something in society, and again, this is true, like, give to others, take care of your kids, take care of your family, take care of your team, take care of your neighbors. And it's true, like it's great to give to people and help others, but unless you're in a good place first, you can't give to others.
Yeah,
And that was what I did wrong was I think as all doctors in all areas of medicine, we get into this to help people and we want to help as many people as we can and give, give, give. But it gets to the point where you lose yourself and we get consumed by our profession and and then we lose who we are.
yeah, it's the same in the personal relationships.
That's right. Hmm.
Um, if you don't pay attention to yourself, you get to be lost into the
Yes,
relationship or whatever the other party wants to do, and you don't focus on yourself first.
that's right.
Um, I also want to know what are the failures you learn from? Because, we mostly learn from failures, not from successes.
That's right.
Can you give us some examples in your life of things that, didn't work out, and at some point you're very disappointed, but you learn from them and you move forward?
Yeah, I think my biggest failures and learnings have happened since that point that I told you when I came home, um, and told my wife that I was like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. Now, I wasn't done with it. I still practiced for many years after that, but I did it in a new way. So I think the one of the biggest ones for me, I boil it down to three things. My biggest mistakes, and this is personal and professional, all revolved around three things. That is setting expectations, setting boundaries, and communication. That's what I was poor at. And that's the crazy thing about dentists and doctors is that we just think if we get better clinically, that's going to solve all the problems. And that wasn't my problem. I wasn't bad clinically. I was fairly good clinically, I thought. And it was once I focused on these soft skills, expectations, boundaries, and communication that everything changed for me. So, an example of that is talking to a patient about a treatment plan and not really going over worst case scenarios or not going over what a revision surgery was going to cost, how long it's going to take, the follow-up it's going to need, how long they're going to be in provisional restorations, for example, and just kind of worrying that if I talk about bad things during the treatment presentation, then they won't do the treatment. And really, the truth was that the more I talked about complications, the more patients trusted me, the more they referred others, the more my practice grew. I thought everybody wanted this perfect doctor. That wasn't actually the case. People wanted to trust you, and trust came from being vulnerable.
Yeah, definitely, that's true. And I think, um, like you said, most people appreciate the fact that you give them the raw options in front of them.
There was some research on this that I just heard, and there was a model in a mall that was selling blenders, and she was putting all the fruit together and blending it, and then she would pour a smoothie, and it would be perfect. And then they did another version where when she poured the smoothie, she spilled the smoothie, and more people bought the blender when she spilled the smoothie. And it's like so exactly my experience with talking with patients.
Yeah,
I thought people wanted that perfect pour of the smoothie, right? But they didn't. They wanted real life outcomes. And even if setting that expectation low, then you kind of realize who the right patients are too. And you can select
yeah,
your patients better.
exactly. Well, speaking of real life, with all, experience that are you a busy medical professional striving to excel in life and work? Stellar Success Podcast brings you the habits and insights of top leaders in medicine and beyond. Discover strategies for balance, growth, and fulfillment in every episode. Follow us on Instagram at Stellar Success Podcast for daily inspiration. Start your journey to success today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel now. You have right now, and the fact that you reached a level of your practice and success, what would you advise someone that was in your shoes at that time to do?
I mean, it's kind of what I said before. You have to focus on two things. You have to focus on how to show up best. So that means taking care of yourself physically, mentally. And the second thing is learning all the soft skills that you never learned in school, which is hard because people don't
Yeah,
put value to these. But we know, at least there's been research 3 different times, 85% of your financial success comes from not comes from soft skills. It doesn't come from being a better clinical doctor. It comes from how you communicate, how you're a leader, how you set expectations. So that's what we need to learn. It's a skill like everything else. I think as doctors, we think the only skills are with our hands. And no, it's like setting a boundary is a skill. Setting expectation is a skill. Being a leader is a skill. Setting, creating psychological safety for a team member is a skill. And once you get good at these, they become just part of what you do every day. But we have to put the time, effort, and money into it. And when you do, magically you get better.
yeah, definitely. I also want to touch on a little subject about financial success for people like you, and
Mhm.
in general in our medical profession. Most of the time, what happens is that, like you said, we're dealing with professionals that are very good at what they're doing clinically, and they reached a good income. They have whatever they need in their life. They spend a lot, and they find themselves after a while that they can really retire very well financially.
Right.
What do you think it's a good strategy from your point of view, where you are right now, in your life, to advise someone in that position to do?
I think most of us don't have financial literacy because when everyone else was learning financial literacy, we were still in school for so long. So I think we need to get financially literate. Lucky for me, when I started in the startup world, I was with a lot of people that were financially literate, and I started learning about investing, whether that's high risk investing or low risk investing. I do a lot of VC investing. I advise different venture capital firms. I advise a lot of companies. But really, this is the thing with most doctors, and you're exactly right. Most doctors make pretty good money, right? A few hundred K a year, some make $1 million a year, whatever. But they never really have their money work for them. Their biggest investments are their home and their practice, usually. And I think if you can start leveraging your money, that's the way to go. And whether that's in real estate or bonds or stock market or startups or VC or med tech, anything like that, that's what we have to do. But it's hard because it's like we're so behind the eight ball, especially in the US, with coming out of school with this crazy debt that we finally then, let's say 10 years later out of residency, we're doing okay and we're making money and we want to kind of enjoy it. And that's really when we need to start investing more. So it's definitely challenging. It's definitely challenging. But I think the more that we can put aside some money that will work for us in the long term, that's the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And what I've encountered a lot in my world of medicine and colleagues and professionals is that people prefer to focus on their little narrow path of medicine and leave the financial aspect to someone
Yeah.
else, to a
Right.
financial advisor, to, a firm or an investing firm or something like that. And that's not a bad thing, but that's not a good thing in, in the same
Mhm.
way, because I think, like you said, financial literacy, it's nobody knows exactly what the best thing to do is
Yeah.
with your money than yourself.
Hmm.
And as long as you outsource this to someone else, you really need to really trust that person really well, or have enough money to afford to lose it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like what I said with soft skills. It's like if you put time, money, and effort into something, you get better at it. So if you want to be financially literate, take courses, get a mentor, get a coach, whatever it takes, or even maybe do it for free. It may take longer, but usually when you put money actually into it, you'll do it better
Yeah,
because you have some skin in the game.
yeah,
And you work on financial literacy 2 hours a week. After a year, think of how much better you're going to be. You've put in over 100 hours on this. It's just like learning a new surgery or learning a new technique is you're going to get better at it. And then the better you get at it, the more you like doing things. We like doing things that we're fairly good at. And then you have some successes with it, you get better at it. And eventually that's what I see when you see the doctors that really, they maybe stop practicing. Now they're just doing real estate or they're invested in this. It's because they got so good at it that it didn't really make sense to practice anymore. But we
yeah.
got to put time, money, and effort into that. Anything. If you want to get better at it, time, money, and effort. That's it.
Yeah, totally, totally true. And I think you touched on another aspect of it, the mentorship aspect, in the financial world. And I'm interested in the way you think right now, being in the VC world. What do you think the best approach would be for someone to get into that world? A mentor, a course, a conference? What do you
Yeah.
suggest?
Yeah. Well, there's like more low touch ways, like a conference. I mean, I'm on panels all the time for these now. Um, Especially in the dental world, the dental startup space is very hot right now. If you can get a mentor, that's always best because you have that one-on-one. I've been helping a lot of dentists just get into the VC world by making introductions to funds and to startups because I advise so many companies and funds. And once they get into it, then they kind of start learning more about it. It's the same thing once they have some money into it. They start to get serious about it and understand, oh, what does the carry mean? What does this kind of interest mean? And what's evaluation? And what's Series A and Series B and Series C? And so you start learning some of these terms and you get better at it. And then, hopefully you have some successes. You probably have some failures too, because with investing, there's always risk. But yeah, I mean, you could start low, like you're talking about, with a course, maybe an online course or maybe an in-person conference, and then work your way up. But
Yeah,
yeah, you just got to put time. You got to put time, money, and effort into it, and it'll happen. And I know a lot of doctors, like I have about 70 dentists that follow me around and invest in the companies that I advise or the funds that I'm part of. And I always have dentists coming up to me being like, I'd love to get into investing, but I don't know where to start. What do I do? And I'm like, well, I'll just put you, I can put you on this list. Whenever I have a company that's looking for something, I can put you in touch with them. And I think doctors are the same way. It's like dentists want to invest in dental companies because they feel like they can add value. They can make introductions. They can kind of be smart money. Oh, I know this owner of this big group, or I know this owner of this company. I can make introductions here. And then you're investing in something where you can actually help with it, as opposed to, the stock market, which of course is much safer than startup world, but you don't really have any say in it, right? You just kind of invest and forget about it. Some people like that, some people don't. So it just depends on the personality of the person, I think. But I think most doctors like to invest in something that they can understand the technology, they can maybe help it, they could be a user, they can give them feedback, help grow the company. So that's always fun for people. I know with the company that I started, we had a lot of dentist investors that really helped us actually.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I wanted to kind of circle back on yourself, and your personal strategy on how you develop yourself from this point on, because you got some experience under your belt. You got some personal development skills already. What do you think is the next step for you?
And the next step for me is just to help more people. I've had around 2,000 dentists go through my online courses, another, gosh, a ton of people in my in-person courses as well. But I think I just like to help more my profession, people that may be going through a hard time, or if they don't have a hard time yet, preventing them from going through a hard time later would be a really big joy of mine. So, dentistry's given me so much, and I just hope that I can give back to my profession more. So really just spreading the word. I mean, you've probably heard some of the research, but dentists are 17 times more likely to commit suicide than a non-dentist. And I would love to change that in my lifetime. I would love to be one of the people that makes that not such a high statistic.
Yeah, it's actually a statistic that holds for many, many, many years now,
Yes.
and it's devastating. I think dentists and veterinarians are the first two
Hmm.
high risk professions. But with what you know right now and the skills you developed, the people that you helped, and the exposure that you had in this field, if you look back to yourself when you started dentistry, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, I would just say like don't be a dental robot is probably the main thing. I was living and breathing and sleeping dentistry all day long. I was listening to podcasts on the way to work, then I'd work 8, 10 hours, then I listen to another dental podcast on the way home, then I get home and I watch dental YouTube. And then once my family went to sleep, then I go to PubMed and I'd read articles until midnight. I was just living and breathing my profession all day. And I just don't think it's healthy. It really consumed who I was. It made my whole identity into my profession. I don't think that's healthy for any profession. So I would tell myself to grow sustainably instead of trying to grow at a crazy level. And I grew at a crazy level, but then I crashed. So
Right.
I would have finished even higher, I think, had I grown at a more sustainable level. I would have told myself to take care of my body more, to be have a little more balance, and to prioritize my mental health. I didn't even really know what mental health was when I started, really. So, and I'd also say to work on my soft skills, work on my leadership ability, work on my communication skills, work on setting expectations and boundaries. And that's what I try to get across to so many young doctors now is don't make the mistakes that I made.
Yeah, yeah. So can you give us a sample of your everyday example? Like what do you think the main points in your days are to fulfill yourself?
Well, for me, I retired from clinical practice last year, so I'm not treating patients anymore, which of course gives me a lot more freedom. Work from home now. So I wake up with my kids. I get them ready for school. I take my son to school. I take my daughter to the beach after that. I live right by the beach, so we go to the beach in the mornings usually. And then I come back. I start doing things around 9. I'm still usually able to pick up my son from school a few days a week. I take him to all of his games and practices. I coach a lot of his teams. So for me, it's just now it's like it's balance. I do jujitsu 3 times a week. I go to the gym another 3 times a week. I've made my health a priority. And it sounds so normal for so many people, but I think for doctors, like taking a lunch break is something that is crazy,
Right.
like drinking water throughout the day, going to the bathroom one time in between patients sounds crazy. So I've made myself a priority. I've prioritized my non-clinical skills and everything changed for me. I knew that my family was a priority, but if you looked at my schedule back in the day, they weren't. I told you they were, but they weren't really. They were whatever was left over time after clinic.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so now I think for me, it's getting to the point of like having a little bit of a slower life, being able to say no to things, being able to set my schedule. That's one of the craziest things that I never thought that I would have.
Yeah, that's true. We need to learn how to say no more.
It was a big
I
problem for
agree
me,
with that.
and I boil that down to boundaries. Those are my three things, right? Expectations, boundaries, and communication. And boundaries, I was just very poor at.
Yeah,
I was definitely a people pleaser.
I see. Um, how can how can people get in touch with you, learn more about your stuff? Um, and what is the next step for you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, drkylestanley.com, Dr. Kyle Stanley. My Instagram has almost every link on there too, so that's just the same, Dr. Kyle Stanley. Next thing for me, definitely helping more people in my profession. I'm still doing a lot of work in the startup space too, so advising companies, advising VC funds, and I still speak a lot. So those are kind of my three things really is the speaking world, the kind of online education world, and VC and startup world.
Very nice. I definitely recommend people to look into your work and follow your example because something worked. Uh, so we need to learn from you and spread the word to people that are in that kind of bad position like you were years ago. Um, this is a serious problem, and most people think that success is something like very unattainable sometimes. But I think most of the time, what we need to realize is that people are struggling in this profession most of
Yeah.
the time. And they're trying to make ends meet, although they're earning a lot of money.
Hmm.
But a lot of people live paycheck by paycheck, even in this profession. They're burned out. They're sick of practicing anymore. They can't retire and they're trapped. So you could be someone that can offer this lifeline for them. I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend everybody to look into your work.
Well, and thank you. Any problem in life starts with self-awareness. And so if, listening to this is your first avenue of self-awareness, great. Have the awareness, then you can figure out the problem. One of my jujitsu professors says a problem understood is a problem half solved. And I think that's exactly it. So I hope that maybe some people learn something today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Stanley.
Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.